frequently do you hear yourself saying, "It's hopeless"? Hi, I'm Larry Buxton. Welcome to Leading with Spirit. And what is hopeless? You may have given up trying to talk with your Republican neighbor or your Democratic cousin. You may despair of any change in the perpetual bickering in your marriage. You may read headline after headline about climate change or gun violence or racial understanding or bipartisan cooperation or a dozen other topics and say, forget it. It's hopeless. Hopeless is a word like inevitable, another word that gets tossed out too frequently. When former Vice President Cheney said that another terrorist attack on our mainland was inevitable, when he said, it's not a matter of if but when, millions agreed with him. And sure, a vague open-ended pronouncement could someday come true, but very few people back then ever thought that hope would have been vindicated 20 years later. Now, except for the cliche about death and taxes, very few realities are truly inevitable. And that's one message of Easter, that situations we label hopeless or inevitable are no such thing. Christians ground the openness of the future in the mystery of Jesus' resurrection. Now, as a preacher, I know it's a near impossible task to explain how a dead person, fully, totally, stone cold dead, could become alive again. But Christianity is based on this unprecedented event, one that we can never explain and only proclaim, saying, now inevitability has been undone. Old certainties can collapse at any time. Even the old limits of God's abilities have been redefined. What does this mean? It means that the resurrection rebukes hopelessness. Easter declares that our despair should never be a permanent companion and that inevitable is one risky word. Instead, grace and surprise, even reversal, are all now the order of the day. I read recently of a divorcee's frustration with her closest friends when she and her ex began to talk and date again. They all tell me to wake up, to let what's dead stay dead and just move on, she wrote. And these are people who claim to believe in the resurrection. Now, most resurrections we may experience aren't the instantaneous overnight reversal that the Gospels report. They do take time. But over time, dead marriages can become alive. A sports team can go from worst to first. Empty branches blossom again. Office morale can turn around. And family enemies can reconcile. And you and I can catch the pale, persistent glimmers of grace and surprise that Easter has produced. So whatever your take on the resurrection, Easter remains an open invitation to live in what Emily Dickinson called the house of possibility. In other words, forget hopeless, forget despair, forget inevitable, but remember that God has built us a house where the impossible happens and miracles do occur, where situations turn around and love reignites and friendships reblossom and gloom lifts, and the future always holds the power to surprise us. Follow us on LarryBuxton.com and join us again next week for a new Leading with Spirit. And in the meantime, I wish you every blessing as you live in Easter's house of possibility.